Hi there, it's Thursday and it's a brand new year. Can you believe it? 2022, and I always write that out in letters just to remind myself how far we have come in the last 2 years. So I am back with my chemistry series. I am incredibly excited. I am a minute or two late because you know what? Getting back into your normal routine of doing the research obviously takes a little bit more time when you've taken a break for 2 to 3 weeks. So welcome. I can see that Marie from Art Accent on Instagram is already logged in and ready for this lesson. So welcome. Today we are talking about another chemical constituent in my chemistry series. It is episode 13 already. So very excited that I can teach you about the chemistry of essential oils and why they work. So for those of you that don't know me, that are logging in new today, just a reminder to go and say hi in the comments so I can see that you're there. I will give you a shout out. And I am Dr. T, Tanya Jooste, and I am doing all my lives and some of my free education on my page called Botanically, an alchemy of soothing botanic ingredients. And this week we will be carrying on with our chemistry series. Now, if you've just very recently logged in, please be reminded that all of these lives have been loaded onto my YouTube channel. So you can always go back there and go and watch the replays as well. If you want a easy link to that, just go pop it in the comments for me and I will send that to you. I can also see Anita is just logged in. Welcome. And Natasha, so good to see you. And Catherine, Happy New Year to all of you. Ooh, also Paula Heeman, you're also in. We are having quite a few people in the session today. I'm so glad I'm back and that you're back. So let's get started. We are talking about a chemical constituent today, which I find very exciting because that's why I'm late, by the way. I really needed to reorganize my thoughts and try and summarize as much as possible in the notes that I'm going to be referring to, because this chemical constituent is so very thoroughly researched in the industry. Both because it is very prevalent in most plants, but also because it is a chemical that is made, or a chemical constituent that is made in the industry, synthetically in other words, because they use it very extensively and in the food and flavoring industry as well. So let's get started. We are talking, of course, about myrcene. So myrcene, episode 13 today, obviously, as I said, 1 to 12 on YouTube. But myrcene is what we call an acyclic monoterpene alkene. Now remember last year we started talking about the bicyclic or the monocyclic. That means circles. So this is acyclic. What do you think that means? Basically, no circle. It doesn't exist. So it is one of those carbon backbones. It's a little bit shiny in the light there. I hope you can see that, right? That is what the chemical structure of myrcene looks like. So it doesn't have a circle, it's got a chain backbone, all right? And although it is one of the smallest monoterpenes, it is very necessary in the plants because it's almost like it's the precursor for a lot of the other chemical constituents that are formed inside the plant for whatever reason the plant is using that molecule for. So whether it be for immune system, whether the plant is using it to attract pollinators or to even ward off any kind of bacteria or fungal infections or even viral infections. So these chemical constituents, which we know the volatiles as beautiful essential oils that support our bodies, both emotionally and physical, remember in the plant, they've got a very similar function, and that is why we discovered them. So they really are just the most amazing things out there. So I really love the way that Tisserand, which is the safety guide for healthcare professionals, very clearly states, because there's so much research done on myrcene, because they couldn't find anything really toxic about it. You know what happens, right? Then they overdose and they see what the highest dose could be, where any sort of negative effects are measured. And unfortunately, the results that are published are with such high doses, it is almost impossible for you. It's almost to the equivalent of, for a regular 70 kilogram adult, the safety data where it's still safe, is where you would drink 35 grams of an essential oil with 50% myrcene in it. And that is an incredibly high dose. I mean, if you would compare that to something in the pharmaceutical industry, that would be like overdose on tablets kind of scenario, right? probably get you in hospital, and it was still not toxic. So the data can't really be used because, number one, the myrcene they used was produced synthetically, and most myrcenes that are produced are in fact very impure. They usually range between 75 to 90%, and the reason for that is, remember, myrcene is a precursor. So there's always like broken down components, or it's already going into the interaction to become something else. All right. So very, very tricky to look at that research because it actually is full of mumbo jumbo, because it doesn't really give you a result except to say that myrcene as a chemical constituent, according to Tisserand and all the thorough research that has gone into this, is a non-irritant, non-allergenic, non-toxic, anti-mutagenic. So how cool is that? It's one of our safer molecules, right? And it can obviously be used on a daily basis to support the emotions and the physical body. And we'll look at some of the research today and learn how you can use this incredible molecule. So it's quite interesting that you do get beta as well as alpha myrcene, but only the beta myrcene is found in plants and essential oils. And for that very reason, when you start reading about myrcene, they usually don't talk about beta. They usually just talk about myrcene, and then they are referring to the beta molecule. So for those of you that have done a little bit further research, I know there's some people on here today that really do like to do the research like I do. Myrcene is better known as the active sedating principle that you would find in hops, yes, and of course the cannabis plant, that couch lock effect. I call it the effect that you would get where you turn your couch into a rare earth magnet, which is an incredibly strong magnet, and you would then be plonked onto that couch and not be able to get up, right? That sedating effect is as a result of the myrcene chemical constituent, which I find really incredibly interesting. And as you go through the research and you compare the different plants to each other, especially if you're going to do the research on the cannabis side, indica versus sativa, and that whole scenario, which we won't go into today, most of that sort of couch locking effect that they talk about in the research is where the concentration of the myrcene, which is the main component then as a terpene, is a higher versus a much lower concentration. And I found that incredibly interesting. Same thing that you find in hops, right? And that is why they are very extensively researching myrcene, because that could lead to the production of very flavorful, because it's also a really good flavor component, as I'll mention in a while, could be used, in other words, to add the flavor because it's got that hoppy aroma. And then you could make an alcohol-free beer, for example, because you're going to get the same fragrance or aromatic profile without the alcohol on the side, which is really quite cool. And where we would find the myrcene principally, in other words, in very large concentrations, is of course then in hops. If you can get a hop essential oil, it is very, very high in there. I can see Renee is also logged in. Welcome on Instagram. And then it's also found in basil, mangoes, and then of course lemongrass. Now remember, lemongrass, there's two varieties, right? There's a lot of different species and a lot of different chemistry associated with the lemongrass, and whereas some species are very high in myrcene, ours that we have, the essential oil that we find generally has got a lower concentration of myrcene, the one that is used to produce an essential oil with a therapeutic benefit. And it's of course found in juniper berry, pink pepper, tangerine, and wild orange, one of our favorite essential oils. And you'll learn today why a lot of wild orange, what the components are actually providing in that wild orange and why it is one of our favorites. And then, of course, its namesake, right? The plant called Myrcea scaerocorpa, which is a plant or a medicinal shrub, which they use very traditionally in Brazil. That's where the word myrcene actually comes from, because that plant has got an incredibly high concentration of myrcene in it. And it's what gives the myrcene is that aroma that we associate with earthy, very fruity and almost clove-like. And it's that hoppy sort of fruitiness, and where the myrcene content is very high in a particular strain of hops that they've used, for example, for a beer, it almost smells sweeter and more fruity. All right, so as I said, this is a very well studied molecule, and I really had to start summarizing, so let's go through some of these research results today. So of course we know monoterpenes are found in most essential oils, all essential oils I should rather say, and they've got a really strong effect on the cell membranes. They're very teeny tiny and they have the ability to pass through that cell membrane. Now the cell membrane, remember, that is the membrane that is around the outer side of all cells, of all human cells, plant cells, all cells basically, and it keeps everything inside. But basically this myrcene molecule and monoterpenes are very small, and now you know myrcene is the smallest monoterpene, and it can get through that cell membrane. There's a lot of research showing that myrcene is very effective in increasing penetration as well, pretty much as you would find in a driver such as copahiba, for example, and it also has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, which is really, really effective. So if we look at the biological activities, it has been reported to have immunostimulant properties. I can see that Sati is logged in on Facebook. Welcome. Good to have you on today. It also has rubefacient properties, which basically means increases circulation and redness of the skin. Really good on the analgesic side, in other words, decreasing discomfort. Very high in sedative effects. Now the myrcene that makes the hops smell like hops is also what makes it a sedative, which is really cool. Anti-diabetic properties. It also has a very high antioxidant potential, anti-inflammatory properties, antibacterial, and also anti-tumoral, anti-cancer effects in various cell lines that have been tested in the laboratories. So, as I mentioned, used very extensively in the food industry, and although the synthetic version, as I said, is very impure, exposure of humans specifically to beta-myrcene or the myrcene is usually from natural food sources, and it's estimated that this exposure in the food sources is around 16,500 times more than you would get from the synthetic use in flavor substances. All right, so that's at least good, because now we know the synthetic one is not pure, but we have a much higher hit rate or likeliness to be able to get it out of the food that we're consuming as is, that hasn't been processed, and the plants that we're consuming, instead of what we are getting in the industry. So let's talk about the central nervous system effects and the neurobehavioral activity. So very high on the sedative effect scale, and there's also quite a lot of good animal work studies where they're showing that it prolongs barbiturate sleep time. So what that means is if you have taken a medication, a barbiturate is obviously an organic compound or some kind of sleeping tablet where it induces sleep or it prolongs the sleep, so it's got that sedative effect. But basically if you use something high in myrcene, it prolongs that sleep, all right, which is really quite fascinating, because remember we say we can always use these things together, and they benefit each other quite well synergistically. Eugene is also just logged in on Facebook. Welcome. And Chris, you've missed quite a lot. Remember, the replays are available on my YouTube channel as well. I will upload the video as soon as possible after the live session today. Then let's look on the anxiolytic side. Anxiolytic, of course, meaning decreasing anxious feelings, right? A lot of people tend to need myrcene in their lives. I know a lot of us are very rested after the short break we had in the vacation, but pretty soon when you get back into the ground, you're going to feel you're probably going to need that extra support. I can also see Liesel from Facebook is just logged in. Welcome. Everyone's logged in quite a lot later today. I wonder what's gone on with Facebook, but not stress. I know the replay is available, so it's not an issue. So on the anxiolytic side, in other words, decreasing occasional anxious feelings, the essential oils that are high in myrcene are going to really benefit you. And usually the myrcene also works very synergistically with some of the other chemical constituents which we know are also anxiolytic in nature. These are all terpenoid alcohols usually, so things like linalool, geraniol, citronellol, for example. And you'll also find that a lot of the plants that have myrcene also have those other chemical constituents that have the anxiolytic benefits that it works synergistically with in the same plant, which I think is really, really cool. Plants just know, don't they? So it also has anti-epileptic potential. Sorry, there's a lot of P's and L's in there and C's. And it does this by attenuating convulsions. In other words, decreasing length, making it shorter, and taking away the frequency. That's what attenuating would mean in this instance. Because of the moderate sedative effects that it has. So really, really quite a lot of potential that myrcene has in a lot of pharmaceutical applications as well. So very high in antioxidant properties, as I say. Now remember, I always talk about antioxidant properties, and I sometimes forget that a lot of people, they sort of, yes, antioxidants, they're amazing, they're awesome, they're the best molecule, but what does it actually mean? Why do we need these antioxidants, you know? Why does Tanya eat a lot of blueberries? And by the way, the antioxidant properties go up when you freeze blueberries, just food for thought in your smoothie. But why is that? Why do we need these antioxidants? Well, they slow aging. There's no other word to put it, right? So antioxidants are accountable for prevention of aging and therefore also degenerative diseases. So when we are able to increase our antioxidant level, we just really are supporting our bodies on a preventative health kind of strategy to look after ourselves for longer, right? So that we can age gracefully, but also so that we can feel well. Overall wellness as we age and we go along. Very good for cell protection. And it's because of the antioxidant properties that it's also very immunostimulating. In other words, supportive of a really good immune system, right? So anti-inflammatory, it also has anti-catabolic properties, especially when you start looking at osteoarthritis studies. So therefore the oils high in myrcene can be really beneficial there when we look at the physical side. And then it also, talking about the analgesic side, in other words, pain decreasing. And here there was a study specifically in a lot of animal studies where they have shown that muscle spasms, and in other words, as well as the discomfort that is felt on a muscular level is definitely decreased when you are using products that are high in myrcene. All right. Also has a lot of research on peptic ulcers, so very good for the tummy area as well. So overall, it's just a really, really good molecule to have at hand. And I just want to grab a book here for a second. I don't know where I put it now. I was going to read from it, and I guess now I've put it away so far that I can't see it. You see, this is the disorganization that happens when you're not used to your routine, hey? Nope. Oh, my emotional book, that's what I was looking for. If we just go to, for example, to one of the essential oils that is actually quite high in myrcene, I'm just going to pick one, juniper berry, because I like the fragrance of juniper berry. It's called the oil of the night, by the way. It decreases nightmares, especially for children, so it's really good to have it in the diffuser at night. And a lot of that has got to do because of the sedative effect, because of the myrcene that is in there. So if I just quickly go to this book and just read from this particular reference, and you guys can see it's so easy to go and do a little bit of digging yourself. If you can't remember about a specific component of an essential oil, there's so many good resources available. But basically, when we look at juniper berry specifically on the emotional side, when you are feeling the negative emotions of irrational fearfulness, for example, or recurrent nightmares, disrupted sleep, or general avoidance, and you would like to move to feel more protected, have peaceful dreaming, be a lot more courageous and self-aware, then juniper berry could be really beneficial, being very high in myrcene and having that very high sedative effect. And there's quite a few essential oils that are have the myrcene present. In fact, there's more than 200, but they're always there in quite a small concentration. So the 4 oils we're going to be talking about today have them in higher concentrations, but you'll still see that it's not the main chemical constituent, because remember, the myrcene is sort of a precursor in the plant to start building other chemical constituents. When we see look at pharmacokinetic studies, so this is obviously how, when you're using a particular chemical constituent, whether it's in the whole essential oil or whether it's been isolated, what it does in your body. In other words, how it's metabolized, where does it go, how does it get excreted after it's been used. And specifically with myrcene, they detect myrcene unaltered. So usually we have these secondary metabolites, and there's quite a lot of reactions that happen in our body. Myrcene is detected unedited. In other words, the myrcene molecule stays intact, and it's detected within the human plasma within 30 minutes after internal use of this particular chemical constituent, right? Which is really quite effective, and therefore it has quite a lot of benefits when you start looking at what it's going to be doing for your body in a physical manner, not just on the emotional manner. And today is going to be more on the physical side compared to the emotional. I know usually I talk more on the emotional side, but this molecule is just so well studied that I'll probably be talking for an hour at least if I needed to go into both sides, particularly for the myrcene. And when they then further go and study in the body, usually now here in animal studies, where they saw where does this myrcene molecule go, it is usually distributed in the adipose tissue, in other words the fat, as well as in several major other organs, including the liver, the brain, the kidney, and the gonads. Now remember the brain, I talked about the blood-brain barrier, but also then the liver. And this is quite important because remember, myrcene is very responsible at increasing glutathione production as its counterpart limonene, for example, that we also find in a lot of the oils together with the myrcene. So that's really, really just amazing. If we're going to now look at the 4 oils that I'm going to talk about today that have it in a higher concentration, if you would like to start using the myrcene either for the analgesic benefit, in other words, soothing discomfort topically. There's also studies, by the way, showing that the discomfort of the analgesic benefit and the anti-inflammatory benefit is quite high when you use it internally as well. And then also aromatically, so you can use it all 3 ways, right? So let's go through these 4 oils and see which ones it is that you need to be incorporating into your daily routines. Juniper berry, as I just mentioned, one of my favorites. It contains the myrcene between 0 and 25%. And as I mentioned, oil of the night, especially beneficial for kids that have nightmares, and a diffuser next to the bed. It supports very healthy kidney as well as urinary tract function, for example. And it's also a really good natural skin toner and cleansing and detoxifying agent. So if you want to combine those properties with the effects that you get with myrcene, go for the juniper berry. Very supportive to the skin as well as the urinary system in the body. Then next one, another firm favorite that I use very often in my cooking as well as in tea. It's got a really nice floral peppery fragrance to it, is of course pink pepper. And the myrcene is in pink pepper between 5 and 35%. Again, very good in salad dressings as well. So really a good one to start incorporating internally because it helps to calm and soothe the nervous system when you take it internally, all right? And it's also going to have that sedative effect because of the myrcene that's in there between 5 to 35%. And usually pink pepper is very supportive to the cardiovascular, the digestive, the immune, the nervous, and the respiratory system. So quite a lot of benefits there if you're going to be using the pink pepper oil. Tangerine, which is of course the product of the month if you are purchasing the brand that I'm really fond of. Product of the month basically means we have a monthly order that we place. It's our investment into our health on a monthly basis, preventative health. And the product of the month is when you buy over a certain amount of products, you get an extra freebie thrown into your order, which is really amazing. I always can't wait for mine. This month, it is tangerine. And of course, tangerine has myrcene between 0.5 and 8%. So definitely going to be able to get the myrcene in there. Tangerine is quite a gentle oil. I like using it, especially when you're making icings or things like that in the kitchen. And it's really good as a skin clearing agent. Promotes mental alertness and soothes anxious feelings, and that of course is because of the myrcene that's in there as well as some of the limonene components. Very good for the cardiovascular, immune, nervous, and skin. Now when we talk about skin and citrus oils, do remember we live in South Africa. Our sun is very, very potent. So when you are going to be using our citrus oils topically, please avoid sun exposure for at least 12 hours if you're not going to dilute significantly. If you're diluting your citrus oil at a very high percentage, then you can apply topically and you should be okay within 2 hours at least. Wild orange, of course, is one of my absolute favorites. I have it in the diffuser at the back, together with some basil. The hormones are like, yeah. Yes, and see, I'm still smiling, so it's definitely doing its work. And the wild orange has the myrcene in it at 0.5 to 5%. Powerful cleanser and purifying agent. I use wild orange literally for almost everything. I use it in my kitchen, on the kitchen surfaces, because not only is it very uplifting for the mood, it also has very high antibacterial power, and now we know it can be sedative, but at the same time, this is now a tricky thing to understand, it's also very energizing and it wakes you up. All right, and it's because of all the other chemical constituents that are in there that are balancing each other out. I do know that there's a lot of people that really like to add 2 drops of wild orange under their tongue in the evening, because it does increase their sleeping time, and it's because of that sedative effect. Okay, so that's definitely something you can try as well. And of course, wild orange is very well known for supporting the immune system because of the high antioxidant power, as well as the nervous system. All right, so all in all, myrcene is an incredible molecule, and it is found in very many essential oils. I just listed the 4 with the top percentages today in the ratios of the other chemical constituents that are in there. We're always looking for the whole essential oil because the constituents are in there for a reason. When you start isolating things, it doesn't always have the beneficial effect that you're looking for, because it needs the synergistic effect with some of the other molecules in there. We always talk about Team E or Team U in yoga, specifically with Yoga with Kira, and the same is relevant for essential oils. They always work together a lot better instead of being isolated. But it's really good to know what each essential oil chemical constituent is doing or bringing to the mix in that synergistic pool of wonderfulness. All right, so we can use it internally, we can use it topically, especially the juniper, for example. Just be careful of the citrus oils in the summer in South Africa. If you're in the UK now, like some of the people on the call today, you should be fine. You should be fine. It's cold and miserable. I like cold and miserable, by the way, it's my thing. But you should be fine to be using the citrus oils topically at the moment. And then, of course, you can do it aromatically. It's a very good one to have in your diffuser. And you'll also see in my Botanically page, I did post a very nice diffuser blend this morning there as well. Go and have a look at that. Give it a try. It's got some really amazing combination of fragrance because of the peppermint and the basil together with the wild orange. Hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Yes, it was a little bit longer. I really had to cut out a lot of the research that I needed to talk about because this molecule is so well studied. It is very safe, and it is just really a very powerful molecule emotionally, but also physically for your body. So thanks for joining me. Replay is always available on my YouTube channel. If you want to share this with someone that's going to benefit from this free education on a weekly basis, please share my page with them. You can just go and tag them in the comments, for example. And if you are looking for an easy to go to reminder about these sessions on a weekly basis, just pop in the comments Telegram and I'll send you my Telegram channel where you can get reminders for all of these things that are happening with the education on a weekly basis. Good to have you on. I'm glad to be back. I hope we all have a fantastic and magical 2022. It feels better already. I'm just super excited for this year. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you all next week, Thursday. Cheerio.